quick tutorial for FreeCAD. A number of people find FreeCAD very frustrating to use because it is quirky. It is quirky, but it is useful. And I'm going to show you how to set up a quick box. I'm actually using this for storage, and we're going to use some variables in there as well. So you start by going up to this, they call this workbenches right here. And we're going to start at part design. So we're going to go to part design. That creates this workbench. All right. For note, I have my mouse set up for quote unquote Tinkercad. And so how my mouse and options work are bound to that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a body. Then we're going to stop. All right. And so what that's done is in this work tree, we now have a body, whereas we didn't have one before. We're going to go to Spreadsheet now, and we're going to create a spreadsheet. I'm going to rename the spreadsheet to var, which is what I normally do. And then I'm going to create variables. Just to remind myself, this is in millimeters. That's how my units are set up. So I like to use that for whatever units just to remind me where I am. All right, so we're going to create a box. It's going to be a rectangle. So it needs to have a depth, a width, a height, and then I'm going to add in a couple more parameters. We're going to put radii on the corners. So, and then a chamfer on the bottom. You do not want to use a fillet on the bottom. You want to use a chamfer. Fillets can cause problems. Chamfers are 45 degrees, which you can print. And we're intending to 3D print this. So, all right, we now have a spreadsheet. So real quick, we're going to save this. Var box demo. We've now created the spreadsheet, which is great. We're going to go here and go back to part design. All right. We've already created a body, so we're going to click on the body that we've already created in part design. And we're going to create a sketch. I want to look down on it. If you see this little indicator up here, top, front, right. So if we're looking down on it, it's going to be the XY plane. So here we are in the XY plane. So we're going to create our centered rectangle. Right here. And constraint preserving sketch fillet. Wonder what that does. Let's see. Oh, even better. So we've created a fillet. Now, these are all different sizes. So we're going to select the equals. I think that's parallel. Yep, that's parallel. We're going to select equals, and we're going to say this curve and that curve are the same thing. This curve and that curve are the same thing, and then this curve and that curve are the same thing. Now we want to dimension our sketch. Before we dimension our sketch, skipped a step on the, so we're going to close out our tasks. We have these. I want to create variables, but in order to create variables, we have this spreadsheet, but we need to finish the depth, width, height. All right, so we need to create an alias. The problem is if there's no contents here, you can't put in an alias. So if I type in depth and hit enter, nothing happens. Okay, did not stick. So we're going to give it measurements. So 250, 160. I'm going to call it 200. Radius of 10. Chamfer of 5. Okay. Now we can add aliases. So we're going to type in the alias and hit enter twice. We're going to type in an alias and hit enter twice. And I like to make my alias match what is just to the left of it, which makes it easier. Chamfer, enter twice. Okay, so now we have these numbers here. So we're going to hit Control S, save what we have, go back to our sketch. Now we can put in our dimensions now that we've saved them as variables. All right. In order to do that, we're going to click on this little indicator up here, enter an expression, and we're going to use less than var dot, and this is the width. Okay, and it's selected the measurement that we used. We're going to now set the height from that point to this point. And once again, we're going to use this. Type in var, it knows it's there. Dot, depth, knows it's there. Now we're going to select the radius. Same thing again. Var, dot. Did I use radius? Yep, radius. Okay. That did not stick. What did I do wrong? There we go. That's 10 though. Okay. So now we have our box. We have our radiuses. Radii? I keep saying radiuses. Radii. We have our radii. We're fully constrained. Excellent. We're going to hit close, and that will close out our sketch. Control S again. These are our variables that we've used. We're going to hit pad, and then once again here, we're going to make this a variable. I'm using down arrow to step down, and then height, down arrow twice, enter twice. There it is. All right. Now using the right mouse button, I'm able to look under it. Middle mouse button pans. I need to close this task. This is the pad task, so I'm going to hit OK on tasks. That's going to close that out, and it's going to give me access to these functions. I do not use fillets on the build plate side because, depending on the size of your fillet, it can create an angle that is too much of an overhang. And if that overhang is too large, then it will not print properly. So you're going to go to chamfer. If you just hit chamfer, it gives you this error, which is one of the quirks and irritations that people have with FreeCAD. So now I'll hit chamfer, and once again, we will set this to a variable. And hit OK to close that out. All right, so what we have done is we have made a box, and this will print very well in vase mode, which is the goal. So the other thing that we can do, I'm going to hit Control S, Windows, I'm going to hit Tile. We don't need the start page. And okay, Window, Tile. Would be nice if it, you know, pushed one and grew the other, but it's free. FreeCAD. Middle mouse button to pan, right mouse button to orbit. The thing that's so beautiful about this is, since we've set up our sketches and all of the features that we want on variables, all we have to do is change these here, and you'll immediately see changes in our box. And that is much faster than having to go in, re-edit the sketch, and change any of those features. All right, so the next step, if we want to 3D print this, we need to go back to workbenches, and we need to change it to mesh design. We have selected the body here, and we're going to go to meshes, and we're going to create a mesh from shape. These settings are fine. I'm going to hit OK. Now we have our body meshed. That can be confusing because it has been overlaid on the 3D space. What do I mean by that? Well, if you click on body and hit, well, let me show this another way. If we change our height to be 300, all right, you see a green body here, and then you see this body. That's because this body is actually outside this one. So if you didn't know that, and you were to make this smaller, you'd look at it and say, why hasn't my thing changed? It looks the same to me. So you can change the visibility of these by using spacebar. So I clicked on this and I'm going to hit spacebar, and now we're looking at this body. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off that body by hitting spacebar. You'll see that it went from blue to gray. Let's go back to this body, turn it back on. Now it's green in here, and we can see it again. This means that now these variables, they are changing the body, but the body that they're changing has been hidden. It's grayed out. So we can change this to whatever we want. We won't see a change, and that's confusing. So double check and make sure that your meshed body is off, and turn that body on. Cool. So I'm going to turn him off, turn my mesh on by hitting spacebar. I'm going to set this to the correct, I believe it was that. Yep, they overlap. So one thing that's a good practice to do is, because you can have multiple meshes, right? So I'll show you what that means. We're going to rename him, and I'm going to name him based on the parameters that made him. I10R 5 chamfer. Cool. All right, now what you can do is you can create multiple meshes here and hide whatever you don't want to look at, and then export what you want. So what does that mean? If I change this to 100, turn off my mesh, click on the body again, mesh, create mesh from shape. Okay, now I have a new mesh. Rename him. Once again, 250 deep, 160 wide, 100 height, 10 radius, 5 chamfer. So I can create a whole bunch of different meshes down here with whatever parameters that I want, and then I just export whichever ones that I want. So you can then export him. Since you've changed the name here, when you go to meshes, export mesh, that will show up with that name, and you hit save. And that's the main features. That's how you create a box and generate an STL in FreeCAD. And just to kind of show you what that looks like, let's pop open Prusa Slicer. So we'll pop this in. There's our box, and you will notice that the chamfer is down. Yeah, it's because we had set it up that way and designed it that way from the top down. I'm going to go in real quick and change this to a spiral vase, so that when I slice it, you get an actual box. But how to set up and configure, especially for a larger nozzle, is probably a topic for a different time. This is principally focused on how to design a simple box in FreeCAD. So, real quick review. With FreeCAD, you need to keep in mind that workbenches are how you do your workflow. And so going between workbenches allows you to do all the steps that you need. So you normally start in part design and create a body. Since I was doing a parametric and wanted to be able to modify, I then moved to the workbench for spreadsheets and had created this spreadsheet, which is over here now. But then you do most of your design in part design, and it's just easiest. I find it the easiest to create your sketch while you're in part design. Make sure you've selected this body, and then you can create your sketch and place it in here. Once you have your body and your body is finished, the way that you get it out of FreeCAD is to use the mesh design. Keep in mind an STL is a mesh. It's an external surface. It's not a solid object. So you go into mesh design and then you create your meshes and then export your meshes. And so working through the workspaces is how you complete the tasks in FreeCAD. Once you know those basics, you can generate and create your own files. All right, that's it for this discussion. Hope it was helpful.